This is a part of the ceasefire deal, and he was scheduled to reach at some point now. There you can see Air Force One there landing at that airstrip. Donald Trump is going to be speaking with the Prime Minister of Israel shortly after landing there. Donald Trump, of course, had said before, or rather moments after taking off, that the war is over in Gaza. A big statement made by the President of the United States of America. This comes at a time when the hostage release has begun in Gaza and Israel at the border. We're being told that the IDF has with them 7 of the 20 hostages that the Hamas were to release, and those 7 hostages now with the IDF. This is going to be a significant visit by Donald Trump to Israel. He is also expected to speak in their parliament. He is also expected to meet with the families of the hostages. Remember, Donald Trump has taken full credit for the release of the hostages that are now, some of them, with Israel. We expect another 13 to be released in another 15 minutes from now. A timely landing of the US President Donald Trump out there, and I have Vishal joining me live. Vishal, very timely landing there by US President Donald Trump, and he has a packed day ahead. He will be meeting with the families of the hostages. There is an address due in Parliament. Just take us through the itinerary and the significance of this man, US President Donald Trump's visit to Israel at this point.
Well, he's also said to be awarded the biggest civilian honor in Israel, and that's just one of the things that is supposed to happen. As you rightly mentioned, it's a big itinerary for him. He's supposed to meet the Prime Minister there for the first time ever since the ceasefire deal was signed, and then he'll go to the Israeli Knesset, which is the Israeli Parliament, where he's supposed to address the whole Parliament, and then he'll proceed to for the rest of the day's proceedings. He's also expected to make a big statement. We don't know what that statement exactly will be, but we'll soon get to know that. And then moving ahead, he'll go straight away fly to Egypt, which will be around 3 p.m. India time. That is where the big world summit is happening, the peace summit as it is being built. They are saying that many world leaders, from Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to French President Emmanuel Macron, they are all supposed to be there. Starmer, the UK PM, is already there. So many of the top leaders are already congregating as we speak. That will be held in the coastal town of Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. It's a very restive place, but it has had a range of activities in the last few days. We saw the last round of discussions, last round of negotiations between both the warring parties. That was also held in Sharm el-Sheikh. What happens in this peace summit, that is being closely watched by experts, because that will sort of lay out the way forward, because the war has already dragged on for 2 years. Now we have a ceasefire in place, but it has already killed almost 70,000 people on both the sides, mostly on the Gazan side, mostly children and women. What happens now, that will be determined by the peace summit that is supposed to happen in Sharm el-Sheikh. So all eyes on that summit. We have had pictures of the release. We have seen that. We have heard reports from the Israeli media that the Israeli military has already taken charge of the 7 hostages that were released by the Hamas side. We are still waiting for confirmation on the remaining 13 living hostages that are still in Hamas captivity. So that will happen any moment now. And then this whole episode of the hell that these hostages had faced in the last 2 years, that is supposed to end. And it also brings in the one of the biggest inflection points in the war so far. This sort of signifies Hamas has been defeated. Whether it cows down and lays down the arms, that is also one of the biggest questions. But this is indeed the biggest moment in the war so far. The hostages will be released, and following that, almost 2,000 prisoners from the Gazan side and the West Bank side, they're also supposed to be released. This is the swap agreement that they had. But the road ahead, that will be quite difficult, because Hamas, for the terrorist group to lay down the arms, that is the biggest worry at the moment.
A lasting peace seems distant for now. Even though we have Trump at the center stage of it all, he's getting a hero's welcome in Israel because of the, this fragile truce that he's brokered. But a lasting peace in Gaza and between the two, at the border is something that is going to be very difficult to really achieve at this point.
Yes, and that is the biggest point of contention when it comes to the aforementioned Sharm el-Sheikh summit, which has attracted almost 20 global leaders. Representatives from India are also expected to be there. Some reports suggest that Kirti Singh will be there. We'll have to wait for confirmation on that. But you rightly mentioned the road ahead will be quite difficult. This is just the first phase of the 20-point plan that Trump had proposed. Both the sides have agreed on many of the things that they did not agree on in the past. But when it comes to questions such as Hamas laying down the arms, the top leaders, being moved out of Gazan territory, the leadership that will be brought in, whether that will only have, foreign players or some local authorities will also be there, because Hamas has been told that it will have no place in the future government of Gaza. Whether Hamas will accept this term or not, these are some of the biggest questions, and these questions have not really been answered in a detailed manner as far as the 20-point plan is concerned. Only the surface layer agreement is signed so far. So as you rightly mentioned, that when it comes to long-term peace in Gaza, there is still a big question mark, but these are some really good times for Gazan people particularly, and also the hostage families, because the 2-year ordeal has finally ended. But many questions whether Israel will agree to fully withdraw from the Gaza Strip. That is also one of the biggest questions. There are 3 layers of withdrawals that have been proposed.
Right.
They have proposed to the first level. The remaining levels we'll have to see.
Vishal, do stay with me. I'm going to draw in Gauri as well, who has been standing by. Gauri, let's talk to these visuals that we're seeing, live visuals there from Israel. The man of the moment is US President Donald Trump. You have the Israeli Prime Minister also standing by with his wife, waiting to receive him. A hero's welcome, but the big question really will be, what after?
Indeed, Vedika, and you have to give credit to the Trump administration. At the end of the day, discussions around ceasefire, discussions around ending this war actually began during the Biden regime, but didn't make any progress. All those talks repeatedly broke down. So to that effect, you've got to give credit to the Trump administration, to Donald Trump, that he did manage to broker this peace. So that, of course, is extremely significant. Of course, the president said on board Air Force One that now there's going to be peace. War has ended. Now, that's a very sweeping statement that he has made, because he hopes that what is actually a ceasefire will be a long-term peace plan. And I think that's where the distinction needs to be made in mind. What prevails right now is a ceasefire. There are some conditions on both sides which have still not been accepted. But will that translate into long-term peace is the larger question. I think that's the real problem here that needs to be seen going forward. As things stand, yes, there is a ceasefire. You've seen those live visuals that are coming in of heroes' welcome that is being accorded to Donald Trump, and rightfully so, again, because at the end of the day, this is a war that's been raging on for 2 years. And one of the most crucial aspects, which is to bring those hostages back, is something that the Trump administration has been able to broker through and has been able to get that deal going. So to that effect, these visuals essentially telling the story as it is, which is that Donald Trump did end the war as things stand right now in the Middle East. But will that translate into a long-term peace formula is the second aspect of which, where there are many questions that exist. And how soon will those questions be answered, Vedika, will essentially provide us a roadmap in terms of the future peace formula for the entire region.
In moments from now, there will be a photo op which will also be marked in the history of relations between Israel and the US, when Donald Trump deplanes from Air Force One and he meets with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. They will also be holding talks, after which Donald Trump will be addressing the Israeli parliament. There is also a top honor that Trump will be accorded. That was announced by the Israeli president some time back. But in moments from now, Donald Trump will take center stage in Israel. This comes at a time when 7 Israeli hostages have been released in Gaza and are now in the custody of the Israeli military, the IDF. And this has been confirmed by them. Crowds have erupted in cheers at Tel Aviv's Hostages Square as news of the release spread. Also, we're expecting in about 10 minutes from now, if not earlier, the remaining 13 hostages, Gauri, that will be released by the Hamas. and handed over perhaps to the IDF, since they already have the first 7 hostages with them. We're expecting that in 10 minutes from now, which makes it 20 hostages that will be handed over as part of that fragile ceasefire agreement. Gauri.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, Vedika. 7 hostages have been released. It was essentially, earlier it was said that they will be released in batches of 4 with 5 hostages in each of those batches. But that's still a fluid situation because Hamas now wants to be seen to be releasing the hostages without causing any last-minute roadblock whatsoever. So those 13 hostages, the alive hostages will come out first, and then the remains of the 28 hostages that have been killed by Hamas will also be handed over to the Israeli authorities. That is going to happen in the second stage. After the living hostages, those who are alive will be handed over. And that is when you will see those huge celebrations and big smiles, and rightfully so, because this is a moment that the entire Israel government, the people have been waiting for 2 long years, and countries have been trying to broker that. You know, administrations have changed to ensure that this finally happens. So when those 13 living hostages finally come in Israeli territory, cross over to the Israeli side, are then taken care of, then you can see at least the living hostages are back home.
Yes, you can see the US President Donald Trump there with that victory sign that he just made with his fist there, and being greeted now very shortly by the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, and his wife. You have a huge entourage there awaiting Donald Trump's arrival while he deplanes from Air Force One. His family members also there, Gauri. I just spotted Ivanka and her husband there. So this is also going to be a moment where the family is with Donald Trump while he is the man, the face of the peace. We don't know how long it'll last right now, Gauri, but the fragile peace that he has attempted to broker in the Middle East. Gauri.
Indeed, Vedika, because, there are 2 sides to it. One is the diplomatic side to it, which is where the administration is brokering this peace, talking, there are these 2 prime ministers who are talking, but the optics are also not just about a diplomatic solution. The optics are about people who've been held hostage for 780 days, finally seeing sunlight, finally seeing them reuniting with their families. So there is those optics as well, which is why the presence of family members, and in fact, Ivanka's husband, Jared Kushner, played a very critical role in Trump's earlier presidency with regard to Middle East. So he knows the lay of the land to that effect. And presence of several of those family members is important because, as I said, the optics are not just about a statesman or a diplomatic solution, far more than that. And which is why this moment is going to be extremely important for Donald Trump and his MAGA base. But one also needs to keep in mind that while, of course, the victory belongs right now, the credit belongs to Donald Trump, back-channel lines of communication, Vedika, were very actively done by Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And they've played a very critical role along with Turkey to ensure that some of this ceasefire formula that has been proposed several times is agreed to ensure the immediate hostilities on both sides end. So while America does get credit, Donald Trump and his administration do get a lot of
live visuals coming in. Let's just try to dip in and try to hear the conversation between the leaders of the US and Israel for a moment there. The audio isn't that clear, but coming back to Gauri now. Gauri, we are seeing the final batch of hostages come back. But the question also at this point is, can this really be seen as the end of this war? Will Hamas remain in power in Gaza is the biggest question. And I think that will be answered once Trump moves to Egypt as well.
There are 2-3 things that need to be kept in mind, Vedika. First and foremost, the kind of tunnel network that Hamas has. Many analysts say it's actually as much as the tube tunnel network that exists in London. And most of it is still intact, which means that the core tunnel network, which has been very influential in Hamas's entire terror network, still exists. So for it to, be demolished is going to be a major demand from the Israeli side. Secondly, they're still armed. They still have a very large cache of weaponry. And thirdly, Hamas has not agreed to the term that they're going to completely vacate the Gaza Strip. So in the wake of these very important dimensions to the peace formula, one needs to keep in mind that the presence of Hamas, the fact that they are armed, the fact that their tunnel network exists, and the fact that they have shown no inclination whatsoever to hand over the complete running of the area to another authority indicates that there are tough decisions to be made ahead. So while we must celebrate this moment today because it's an extremely important, pivotal moment in the entire region's conflict, one needs to keep in mind that from here on, the roadmap towards peace will require several of these questions to be answered, and that also means role of Hamas. The other authority that we are talking about that will come about and take care of running of this area will come about. The Gaza Authority will only happen once Hamas vacates that area, once Hamas shows the willingness to ensure that it lets go of its arms, lets go of its entire weaponry, and the cadre that exists there, all of which has not been completely demolished. So those questions, Vedika, are something that the world will need answers to. Some of that, one may assume, we may get at the Sharm el-Sheikh summit that will take place in Egypt in a couple of hours from now, but not all of them.
Gauri, do stay with me. Vishal, do stay with me as well. I will be coming back to both our correspondents who have been covering this for us, but I believe that Jonathan Kornikas, former IDF spokesperson, is joining me live. Jonathan, thanks for speaking with the NDTV 24/7. It's been 2 years of endless pain, suffering, uncertainty. How's the atmosphere and the anticipation back home in Israel as we speak?
Oh, it's absolutely electric. And the build-up, as you say correctly, it's been going on for so long, more than 2 years. Such tremendous suffering, uncertainty, cruelty, psychological warfare by Hamas, who have been taunting the families and manipulating their feelings in trying to extract political gain by sending these horrible videos of emaciated and very skinny hostages in order to try to get Israel to cave under pressure. But today is a very happy day for anybody around the world that wants to see justice. Finally, Israeli hostages are being returned. They're being returned to their loving embrace of the families.
Yes.
20 live hostages will be returned today. Hopefully, 28 bodies will also be returned. I understand that Hamas has said that they have difficulties allocating all of the bodies of the murdered hostages, and we should anticipate at least a few not to be returned today. But all in all, this is a milestone. It's a very exciting moment. There are people out on the streets in Hostage Square, down in the south, where close to the military base Re'im, where the hostages will be brought into Israel for the first time. There are people waiting outside of hospitals. There are people lining the streets. There are people that are waving flags in every square and town in the city. We're a small country in Western Asia of less than 10 million. So in Indian size, this is very, very small, hardly a city, but the entire, you can really feel the love, the excitement, and the so much pressure that is being released after 2 years of war, and the suffering of the families may now hopefully come to an end. Those that get their loved ones back for healing, and those that unfortunately only get the remains of their loved ones, at least to bury them properly.
You know, Jonathan, we're getting you live visuals of Donald Trump reaching Israel at this point, but parallelly, in moments from now, we are hoping and expecting for 17 more of those Israeli hostages to be released by the Hamas. But Israel is also releasing close to 2,000 prisoners, Jonathan. Does the current agreement mark a shift in Israel's negotiation doctrine with terror groups, or is this just a tactical exception under pressure?
Yeah, sadly, I don't think that it is a different Israeli strategy. By the way, I have been calling on Israel to completely overhaul the way that we deal with hostage-taking situations, because if we zoom out for a second here and address this issue strategically, and I think this is relevant for viewers in India and viewers all around the world and governments all around the world who face Islamic, radical Islamic organizations. The hostage taking must be stopped, and democracies and countries fighting against these terror organizations must, I think, really reform how that whole issue is addressed. And there needs to be different legislation, there needs to be different military measures and different legal and diplomatic framework to make it not valuable for terror organizations, or not profitable for terror organizations to take hostages. Because when you look at this strategically, what Hamas did one day, October 7th, 2 years ago, they took 251 hostages, and that in fact was a strategic checkmate for Hamas against Israel. We've been dealing with the consequences ever since, and I think that needs to be prevented in the future. There needs to be different legal frameworks simply to make it illegal to return Palestinian convicted terrorists as a part of a hostage deal. And there needs to be different legal measures, and there needs to be different military measures, because at the end of the day, if we don't put a stop to it now, we will see other terror organizations in the future try to emulate what Hamas did, sadly, so successfully. So what we're seeing today is the release of convicted Palestinian terrorists with lots of blood on their hands, Jewish blood, Christian blood, Arab blood on their hands. And that is sad, but that is what Israel has been forced to do as part of this deal. We're getting our brothers and sisters back, and that's the primary focus for us. But from here on, I've been campaigning for there to be a different Israeli strategy, and my recommendation for freedom-loving democracies like India is to do exactly the same, to make it not worthwhile for terrorists to take hostages.
Cannot also forget at this point the kind of casualty numbers we're seeing in Gaza as well. The casualties, unfortunately, have been on both sides. We've seen the comments from the president as well, essentially hinting at continued conflict. Will Israel continue its assault on Hamas? Because this is a fragile truce that we've been talking about ever since the ceasefire between the Hamas and Israel has been announced.
Well, it depends on whether Hamas will honor the agreement that they agreed to, that Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt have vouched for, is that Hamas will disarm and that they will relinquish control over the Gaza Strip. If Hamas does those two things, there is absolutely no reason for Israel to continue to fight. And I think Israel would rather prefer not to continue to put troops at danger and have all of the negativity in fighting. But if Hamas refuses, if they renege on their commitment, Israel will have no choice. And Israelis are not safe as long as Hamas exists. So whether it happens peacefully, as the Trump plan stipulates, or it happens with the use of force, at the end of the day, this war will be over only once Hamas is dismantled and the Gaza Strip is de-radicalized and taken from the talons of this jihadi terror organization.
All right, Jonathan, thanks for joining us live there from Tel Aviv, and thanks for adding perspective on what we should expect in the coming days from Israel. But Vishal is with me, and so is Gauri. Vishal, let's again switch gears and talk about the man that you see on your screens right now. In the beast there, his car, the private car of the American president. Let's talk for a moment about the top honor that he is about to receive from Israel as well, for the truce that he's brokered.
Well, this was highly expected because, he has sort of single-handedly pulled Netanyahu out of big trouble, because Netanyahu had been in trouble back home in his territory, and also when it comes to his foreign policy, because there were protests, consisting of thousands of people, lakhs of people almost every month against his regime, whether be it against his corruption scandal that has been involved in, or be it the Gaza war, which had resulted in the capture of almost 250 hostages. Now almost all of them will be released, and there were many questions as to what is the plan, what is the long-term plan when it comes to the Gaza war, because there seemed to be no end in sight as far as Netanyahu is concerned. But Trump swooped in and he crack this big deal between both the warring parties. Actually, some better deals had been offered to both the sides in the past, but they had rejected the deal. But this time, they agreed to the deal. Whether it was some backdoor diplomacy by the Trump administration, that remains to be seen. But he has been quite open about it and talked about it frequently. He has rushed in his top people to the Middle Eastern side, whether be it Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner. They had been regularly in touch with both the sides, both Israel and Hamas, to broker this deal. When that big summit happened in Sharm el-Sheikh about a week ago, that was after months, because both the sides, Israel and Hamas, they had particularly almost stopped talking, and to bring those parties on talking terms, even though indirectly, that also took a lot of courage and a lot of discipline from both the sides, particularly from the Trump side. And he has been able to crack that deal, and he was billing himself as the Nobel Peace Prize winner. That didn't happen, but
Yes.
many experts are suggesting that that could happen next year.